You know, I think it would be rare to recommend a movie that took me maybe weeks to complete, and that was the case with Drive Away Dolls. And now that's not a negative, that was simply down to my time and when I was able to finish it. This movie was great, so let's get into it. This is Drive Away Dolls. This stars Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan, and it is an Amazon movie directed by Ethan Coen, of course famously one of the Coen brothers, both of whom are responsible for films such as No Country for Old Men, Fargo, The Big Lebowski. This was Ethan Coen's solo directorial debut without his brother. The movie is truly a wild ride from start to finish and completely absurd. At times it reminded me a lot of Love Lies Bleeding, at least the feeling it gave me, as well as hints of Pulp Fiction and Seven. It really leaned into the 1990s setting, and I absolutely loved that. It was a comedic thriller with a lot of romance to it. I felt the romance actually led the story, with the thriller being the secondary to it. Now, there will be spoilers for this movie. You have been warned. It's really hard for me to give a review without spoiling. I need to learn how to do that. But I will do my best to skirt around anything major, but I might fail. Drive Away Dolls follows two women, Jamie and Marianne, who embark on a road trip to Tallahassee. However, things go awry, of course, when they cross paths with some criminals. And unbeknownst to them, the car they have rented is filled with some damning evidence that the criminals are after. The two of them embark on their road trip, with them having a time limit to drop off this car. They, of course, don't know why. We, however, understand why. There is something in the car, and people need the car by a certain time. But like I said, the characters have no idea the contents of the car. However, Jamie encourages Marianne to explore her wild side and learn to let loose, leading them to delay the car drop-off and make stops along the way. Of course, this angers the criminals, who then have to go after them. The pair party with a group of sportswomen. I say sportswomen because I can't for the life of me remember what sport they play. I think it was soccer. English football. Football is the correct term. With the night descending into everyone hooking up and Marianne leaving midway through, this will make sense later. Their trip is derailed though after they get a flat tire and finally discover the case and box and learn the contents of the two, which in turn leads to the conflict and climax of this movie. Now, I am skipping over a lot of the middle chunk. It's not necessary in order to further the story. They do make a lot of stops along the way. They meet a lot of different characters. But from the road trip to the climax, we're going to go straight to it. The climax of this movie had me absolutely howling. As we know, with Coen films, they lean into the absurd. But this movie took it to a brand new height. The contents of the box and case are revealed, with the box containing the head of Pedro Pascal. Now, we met him at the very beginning of the movie. He briefly had possession of the case, the criminals were after it, and he was taken out in the first few moments. I should also state there are a lot of cameo appearances in this movie. People pop up for just a few seconds, but you're like, whoa, they're in this film, and then they just disappear. Now, the case contained toys of a nature that wouldn't be suitable for YouTube, so I can't necessarily say what the toys were, but use your imagination. You can probably guess. Toys. Toys that were crafted in the likeness of powerful figures, at least a part of their body, with one of these people being a politician played by Matt Damon. And the person who got close to them in order to craft these toys, Miley Cyrus. She just pops up in a flashback, and I'm like, that's Miley Cyrus, and then she's gone. But it was kind of great. Weird cameo appearance. Absolutely loved it. I love Miley. They end up blackmailing Matt Damon, exchanging the case for money, and escaping this very strange situation. The entire movie and its epic chase come down to a case of toys, and of course a head, with the criminals trying to seize the case in order to destroy the evidence for the politician who is running for office. It's hilarious, as we were prepared for something a bit heftier or more criminal. Yeah, here we are. The chase was all down to a case of toys. I should also note that the two women used one of these toys towards the end of the movie, leaning into the absurdity of the film and the absurdity of the characters. It was utterly bizarre, and we just kind of accept that it happens, and no one finds it very odd. The film at the time feels very episodic, with the way our two leads encounter new characters along their trip and have to deal with new problems at each place they stop. Now, the film did take me a long time to finish, but this was down to my own time commitments, like I said, and yet despite it being broken up for so long, I still thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I should add that the movie did divide audiences, of course. specifically those that went into this film being fans of the Coen brothers and their past movies. I'm of course one of those people that is a huge fan of the Coen brothers, but I went in very open-minded with it being Ethan's directorial debut solo. I enjoyed it for what it was. Some people, however, felt it lacked the spark of his previous undertakings, which I would agree if you're comparing it directly to Coen brothers films. It's very difficult to compare. It didn't delve too deep into subject matter, and it wasn't as violent or heavy or leaning into serious criminal activity. However, it did still have those similar Coen brothers tropes. It felt at times like it still was reminiscent of a movie like No Country for Old Men or Fargo. However, it flipped it on its head completely, which I appreciated. It still had similar subject matter. People having an item in their possession that people are wanting, criminals are going after them, they are on the run, they must protect themselves. However, this leaned more into comedy, even romance, and I liked that it was completely flipped on its head. I thought the film was refreshing. It was a fun road trip, a comedic thriller that lacked any major weight to it and never delved too deep into dark subject matter, but I appreciated that. I enjoyed that the ending showed how all of this was for something so minor, yet everything was taken so seriously. Not to mention, I appreciated the LGBTQ+ representation in this movie, with it not leaning into the stereotypical and avoiding any major tropes that sometimes movies fall into. It felt at times that we were following two female friends just falling in love while navigating the secondary plot of them being hunted by criminals. I was invested in the romance portion of the story, and I felt that it paid off in a major way by the end of the film. Now, like I said, despite the negative response by many, I had a great time watching this film. I was aware it was Ethan's solo debut and a departure from the Coen brothers' typical stylings, but it did still feel familiar, with tone and with comedy. I thought it was refreshing, genuinely funny, and the performances were stellar. Let me know if you have watched Drive Away Dolls. Definitely check it out if you haven't. But just remember, go into it open-minded. Go into it not thinking about the past Coen brothers films. That will be your demise if you do that. If you are thinking about Fargo or No Country for Old Men, you're going to be very disappointed. So just go into it open-minded. Have a fun time. It is a blast. But if you have watched it, leave me your review below. Let me know what you thought. And if you didn't like it, I completely understand why many wouldn't. That being said, I will see you in the next video.